It's your boy, Sergeant Hooked on Heroes, and this is the first entry in our new series on the podcast channel here on Henshins and Homies called the Toku Spotlight. This is a little thing we put together that allows Frankie and I to kind of slow things down and focus on one important aspect of tokusatsu. It may be an overall season review, like this video we're watching right now, Kamen Rider Geats, or a character analysis, or maybe other amazing aspects of the genre overall. Basically just a series to let us kind of hyper-focus on these things and be a little different than some of the things we may talk about within the confines of the podcast itself, or what I was doing on my own personal YouTube channel. But today's inaugural episode will be focusing on Kamen Rider Geats, my personal review of the series now that it's ended. These are only my thoughts, separate from Frankie, who may or may not eventually record his own video about the show. He shares similar thoughts to me, but there are, I'm sure, other things he feels differently about. And that's okay. That's the beauty of our show and why we work as co-hosts together so well, in my opinion. But overall, I think it's no big surprise that I've been a huge fan of Geats right from the jaw-dropping first episode to the emotional final moments, and I was just completely captivated by the star of stars. Not to say, however, that the series has no faults, but overall, this is not only the best of Reiwa Rider so far, but also challenges even the greatest heights of Heisei era, in my opinion. Within this little video here, I kind of plan on lightly touching upon most of the arcs and the pivotal episodes as well. At the end, I'll deliver my final score for the series. I also will try my best to delve into the characters and their overall depth or narrative significance. So that's kind of how the setup is going to be overall. So, this season was one that definitely both excited yet worried me simultaneously. I'm not the biggest fan of Battle Royale games, and to hear that Fortnite and like Apex Legends and other games similar to those were going to be a primary influence with this show, it definitely worried me, to say the least. I know this is something that I talk about people all the time on Toku Twitter doing, where they have the toxic way of the show hasn't even come out and all of a sudden they have a fully formed opinion about it. But I was just worried about where it was going to go and how it was going to be in general because of these influences. But I will say that this was all washed away with the initial series poster, trailer, and the first episode. I was instantly hooked from the first minute of episode 1 and seeing for the first time the DGP, the Desire Driver, and our main rider for the year, Yukio Ace. The first two arcs of Geats, I honestly kind of lump into one, and I'm probably one of the only people that really does this, but I feel like the Encounter and the Conspiracy arc don't quite have a real big separation between the two of them, and I think together form what I like to call the Welcome to the DGP arc, where we can learn how the competition works, who the major players are, and they're introduced to us, and we're introduced to the concept of the world resets. This is something that's very interesting, something I really enjoyed within the confines of the show. But during each new round of the DGP, one contestant has their desire card fulfilled, and the world resets. Everybody fills out desire card, what they want the most in the world. If they win the whole thing, here we go. Erasing memories of anything that's happened and preparing everything for the next round. This concept allows for immensely great storytelling opportunities, as each reset allows for a new status quo benefiting the winner. It also layers a sense of mystery to the DGP and its inner workings that we receive more of as time goes on. This is, of course, assisted by an amazing cast of writers who help propel the story along. And I want to really focus on this. The whole world reset thing, I wasn't sure it was going to work, but the way that they did it was both surprising and really well utilized throughout the show. There's quite a few different resets that happen, all of which are pretty surprising in how they are set up and what they put through as the new rules going forward. And I love that. We're so used to as fans of the series of a status quo change part way into the show, where what we were doing before as the main aspect of the show is now kind of pushed aside for something a little different. Things like in Build, where we eventually get the 3 parts of Japan, the 3 cities or whatever, city-states, going up against each other, having that whole battle situation going on, and other parts of it where it wasn't just collecting the full bottles, it expanded out into other things. But this is a little different because it completely reset and changed everything. It almost felt kind of game-like, which of course makes sense since Takahashi, who wrote this, also wrote 01, but also Kamen Rider X8, one of my favorite seasons. So, as I said before, it's assisted by an amazing cast of writers who really help propel the story along. Ace, or Kamen Rider Geats, the titular writer, is our main writer, who we assume has been at it for many years. He's confident, manipulative, fox-like, and overall a badass main writer. Although he does trick and manipulate others in the first arc, we do get to see that he has reasons for it for the most part, such as when he donates some of his money to help Genpin's son. One of my favorite episodes for Ace is the amazing one where he literally leaves clues for his future self, leading him to touching Buffalo's ID core, regaining his memories, getting his driver, and re-entering the DGP. Just a masterclass in writing. It definitely reminded me of one of my favorite movies, Memento by Christopher Nolan. If you don't know that, the basic setup with that movie is the main character has severe memory loss. And he's left notes on himself, either written or as tattoos, to lead him to figuring out what's going on, this like situation he's a part of. So we get a similar thing here. Yeah, Ace doesn't give himself a bunch of tattoos, but he knows how smart he is naturally and leaves himself clues in the event that he were ever taken out of the DGP to lead him back to the DGP so he can continue on. And it takes a while for us to really get what his true motive is. I think when in the first few episodes we hear something about, I'll find you, don't worry, I'm going to find you no matter what. And we don't really find out who that is later. It ends up being his mother, and that's his main reason for doing so. But he keeps that close to his chest until he starts to get closer to some of the other characters, such as Michinaga / Kamen Rider Buffa. He's another of the main writers here who's a little more aggressive and less trusting than Geats or pretty much anyone else in the cast. He's propelled forward by a longing to avenge his fallen friend. He desires a world where he can destroy all other riders. He's heroic, but in a more Vegeta-like sense from Dragon Ball Z, if you're familiar. His growth in the first arc is pretty awesome to watch, and his return in the next is pretty well done and pretty creative with how they pull it together. Michinaga is one of my favorite characters in the show. I think I like Keiwa a bit more just because I feel like they gave a bit more to him, and they kind of stunted Buffa near the end a little bit, but we'll get there as we continue here. But I do like his whole reason for, wanting to wipe out all riders is that, to him, riders were responsible for the death of his very best friend. So I kind of like that connection there. It's a very personal way of seeing how the DGP affects people in negative and positive ways, which is a really good part of the show. Next up, of course, is my boy, Keiwa / Kamen Rider Tycoon. He's, of course, the Boy Scout who desires overall world peace, He's a good boy. He's unemployed, lives with his sister, and their parents are gone. Keiwa feels the weight of the world on his shoulders, and the DGP presents a possible opportunity to maybe change this. He truly sees the good in people, but oftentimes this blinds him to the fact that some people are just going to lie right to his face. But honestly, my man Keiwa is the GOAT of secondary riders, and I love his sense of justice and his willingness to help others, even in a competition. It definitely reminded me a lot of Shinji from Kamen Rider Ryuki, which brings me to another small thing that a lot of people would compare this series a lot to Kamen Rider Ryuki, mainly because there's a lot of riders and it's a competition. It's pretty much where the similarities end. Funny enough, Ryuki riders, some of the Ryuki riders show up in the crossover movie with Revice. And specifically, Shinji has a pretty good conversation with Keiwa, which I really liked. So as Keiwa, my favorite episode in the beginning arc is when he gets the ninja buckle and helps save the day, but also inadvertently sets things in motion where Sarah touches his ID core, gets her memories restored of their parents' death and that they were killed in a previous DGP. So again, hitting on this whole thing of like what the DGP does and its effect on people, that it's not just, hey, let's compete and get a cool wish fulfilled, woohoo, like lives are lost. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get there. So he's eliminated in the episode due to his injuries sustained, but soon after he gets to rejoin the fight, taking over willingly for Kilo, who is an older man rider that joins later on. Basically realizes he's not cut out for this and sees how heroic Keiwa is, not knowing that he was a part of the DGP before, and wants to basically transfer his rider, credentials over to him. It's also where we get introduced to the idea of the rule cards at the end of the episode that tell us different things about how the DGP works. Different, rules that can't be broken, rules that must be followed, and ways that certain things work, such as if a rider is deemed unfit, their credentials can be transferred to another, which is what happens to get Tycoon back into it. His heart and his determination to help others, even without powers, is amazing, and it's so entertaining to watch. So next up, of course, is your girl, Neon / Kamen Rider Nago. She is... One second. Has a unique story arc, as she lives with affluent parents who forbid her to leave. This pushes her to rebel and kind of create a vlogging channel where she tries to escape home, much to the chagrin of her bodyguards and family. Bodyguards, of course, played by John Constantine and, oh my goodness, Michael Kinder. Tom Constantine we've had on the show, by the way. Check out that episode. Her desire centers on finding true love, which spawns from a need for connection that she's so often denied by her family. I found her story to be a breath of fresh air, and particularly loved seeing her train with Ace to learn how to fight in the beginning of the show. It's not something we see very often where a rider doesn't know how to all of a sudden be a martial arts badass once they transform. And most of the time I let it go, but it's also just kind of like goofy to think about that all these people suddenly know how to like kick ass. And at least within the confines of something like Power Rangers, we get the idea that the morphing grid holds knowledge of fighting and defending yourself and gives that to the person when they morph. But because there's nothing similar within Rider in terms of a connective energy source where their powers come from, it's left like kind of a mystery as to how they know how to fight. And so her kind of sucking at the beginning and asking Ace to help her is really cool. It connects them, as really good friends. He kind of becomes a big brother character for her, honestly. And also propels her forward into being a much stronger character. So next up is the Game Master, or Jirori. And he's unique in how he wishes... I love this man. To be rid of Ace, as he's won nearly every DGP previously for the last 2,000 years. This is where we start getting the idea that Ace is maybe reincarnated or something's weird going on that he's been doing this for so long. He's the #1 Geats hater, and I am so here for it. I especially love when his rider form, Kamen Rider Glare, is revealed. That debut is great. The henshin, the suit, all of it. And the way that it works, where he has these like little sentry cameras that can go out and like watch things. It's really cool. And take control of people. So that debut is great. And then also his defeat not long after that. It's a shame he doesn't return to the end of the show, because honestly, him and a villain later on, Jirori, are probably two of my very favorites in terms of the villains in the show. But I do enjoy him for the time we get him. Last primary character is the DGP navigator herself, Sumuri. She helps explain the rules to each round, and at least at first, does not really relate much to the contestants. But this kind of changes as she's humanized throughout the story, and it progresses alongside her interactions with Ace and the other riders. So at first, she's really just kind of being like, good, well-mannered with it, and just, being nice-ish, but still kind of trying to stick to the rules. But once she starts to see things kind of going a little dark in terms of how Jirori is so, stuck on and obsessed with getting rid of Ace and other things, she starts to kind of pull away and see that maybe this isn't exactly what she wants to do, or that she doesn't exactly agree with everything. Which I think is good. I think it's a cool arc for her. I'm also really happy that Sumuri never henshins in the entire show. I really was going to be kind of let down if she was all of a sudden a rider, because I feel like it's not really a necessary part to her arc, and it wouldn't have really added much to her. Her being this side character that's still important, especially with later arcs, is good that she can be that without having to transform. So I think that just, speaks to the writing. Overall, this intro arc to the show is honestly spectacular. It serves as the best in Reiwa, in my opinion. I love that we get an early show mystery that kind of allows for things to change wildly on the fly, depending on who wins each round. It truly sets up intense stakes to each episode, as the viewer is left hungry to find out who might clinch the victory. And again, anybody could technically win. There's a lot of times where there's a lot of misdirection and manipulation that happens with all of the characters to get their victory in that specific part, that, specific episode or challenge or whatever. I also like the overall setup of it, that each one kind of feels like a video game, where there's like secret, side objectives, and if you complete those, you're getting little, boost items and things like that. This happens a lot for Keiwa, and that's where we start to get closer to the Days of Star arc, which we'll talk about in a minute here, and also his supporter, Kikara. So the arc here concludes with Jirori's defeat by Ace and Keiwa. They kind of throw him off. He tries to set them against each other, setting up this like fox hunt game, and they essentially saw that coming and set him up into thinking they're going to fight each other, when in turn they turn the tables on him. Pretty much it's saved by Niram, the producer of the show, we find out. A few episodes prior to this, he's the one that gave the Command Twin Buckle to Ace, and also another one for Keiwa. So he literally, my man Niram comes in, says, Jirori, it's not going to work out. We're going in separate directions here, buddy. snaps his fingers, Jory, out of transformation, loses the driver, and snapped out of existence. And it was pretty impressive. As far as other characters, again, we get some one-shot little riders here and there. There's Kamen Rider Mary, who's a gambler, kind of just a dick, doesn't really do a whole lot. Genpen, who really just kind of serves as like the pushing forward kind of, force to kind of propel Cable forward to continue competing, who was would have been his boss at the job he interviewed in the beginning of the show, but he didn't get the job, but he got to know him, learned he had a son who had a debilitating disease. He was fighting to fulfill his wish to save his son. He dies, and Ace ends up surprising pretty much everybody, myself included, by donating his money to the son to get him the treatment he needs. There's other ones too, like Dapan, basically school shooter Magoo. He's not really that interesting in my opinion. The only other one that really is interesting is Punk Jack, only because he comes out as a DGP staff member and is silent. And then near the end of this, we see he's an actual person named Haruyu Win. That he is his grandpa has ties to the DGP. Basically is pissed that Haruya is a punk rocker and wants to be a musician, thinks that's a shitty job, forces him to be part of the DGP, and it's through this that he is at first sided with the DGP, but then Ace kind of gets, into him a little bit and is like, basically helps him realize that, like, he should be following his desires and passions and that may not lie with the DGP. Unfortunately, he is killed in this arc, and we might see him later. We'll get there. So that kind of ends the first arc, the Welcome to the DGP arc, as I was trying to call it. The first one, I'm going to probably give a pretty glowing score of probably a full 10 out of 10. I really enjoy it. I think it's a really fun introduction to everything. Really gets you into the show and what's to come. And is very entertaining all the way through. Easy to understand for the most part, and in general, just awesome to watch. I just really enjoy it. And honestly, Geats is probably one of the newer seasons that I would recommend people who have never watched Rider to honestly watch, because it's just a lot of fun to watch. It's a great intro, and it really gets you hooked. But of course, this arc is followed up by an arc that some people are not the biggest fan of, which is the Daisy-Star arc. So overall, this arc is pretty unique, and it does add many layers to the DGP, but it kind of falls short in terms of its execution once the Daisy-Star is revealed. We get some awesome new riders, such as Kamen Rider Lopo, an athlete who wishes basically to be in peak physical form for the rest of her life, and also take care of her younger siblings, forming a sisterly bond with Neon as a result. And also Madge Sparrow, Daichi, who basically just wants knowledge and comes up annoyingly a bunch near the end of the show. We'll get there. The basic idea with the Daisy-Star arc is that each week of the show, there is a new challenge. Everybody has an approval rating. Those with the lowest approval rating could be taken out of the show entirely. Also, people are voting about who they think the Daisy-Star is. Basically, a traitor amongst their ranks who is setting things up, screwing people over in general, need to be out because they're stopping people from being successful. But there's a caveat. People have to vote who they think it is each week, even if they're wrong, and that person's done. But also, if the Daisy-Star isn't picked and they make it all the way to the end, they are instantly given the gratification of victory and their desire fulfilled. Again, pretty interesting in the way that it's set up, but also makes a lot of sense because they're trying to, increase their approval ratings, because it is also revealed in a shocking twist that the DGP is actually a rider reality show from the broadcast from the past to the future to entertain people in the future whose lives are boring. They're created a certain way. They have a beginning, and middle, and end of their lives dictated to them as soon as they're born. People from there come back to the past, namely the DGP staff in general, but also the support riders. Baraba, who supports Michinaga, Keikara, who supports Keiwa, and we've seen him as a little frog statue. Kyun, who supports Neon, kind of as like this lurking Twitch chat guy that has a huge crush on her, kind of a thing. And Jean, who is the absolute biggest fanboy of Geats ever, sees him as the best thing since, sliced bread. Even his own rider form is based on a fox, just to be similar to Ace. So again, we get some really interesting little unique things introduced here that pick up more steam in the following arc. And overall, it's an entertaining arc, but again, it kind of just starts to fall apart when you think about it too hard, and especially with how it ends. So throughout it, of course, everybody has the finger pointed at him. Some people think it's Ace, some people think it's Kawa, blah, 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 blah. And eventually, Lopo and Mad Sparrow are voted out. At one point, people think that it's Kawa because he encounters a Jamato who starts saying things that Ginpen used to say. He starts to realize, and eventually finds out, that Archimetal has been creating the Jamato to be able... He basically is using ID cores of fallen riders to feed as fertilizer to the Jamato, giving them memories and even abilities similar to the people who have died. Pretty shocking and gross and upsetting, but also a unique part to the show. Alongside all of this, Buffa is still around. We find out that certain raised buckles resonate with certain ID cores. Namely, the zombie buckle resonates with him so much that it resurrected him. He wakes up in the Jamato Garden with Archimetal, who introduces him to Baroba, and realizes he keeps reviving. And he ends up taking his cracked ID core, putting it in, transforms somewhat, tries to get a Jamato buckle from the Jamato Riders, which were recently introduced. The foot soldiers get an upgrade where they can transform, and uses the Jamato buckle on himself in a pretty brutal fight to get one. Ends up infecting him, but this is where I take a point away for this arc because he's infected with a Jamato virus, but it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't debilitate him. It doesn't slow him down. It doesn't really frighten him at all. It doesn't really do anything, and I kind of feel like they kind of forgot about it after they introduced it because it doesn't really do anything for the arc. But it's fine. So near the end of it, we do finally get it revealed through these different challenges, one of which puts the powered builder, if you can't see it, maybe down there, buckle from the movie back into the show for its debut. Puts through the idea that, or the reveal that Neon is our Deza Star. She's been the one pulling the strings throughout and screwing with things, messing things up, whatever, and she's the traitor. But that's where it ends, and that's my other point against this arc, which I'm going to probably score it around an 8 out of 10, because we don't do anything with that reveal. As unique and interesting as this arc is, adding the layers it does to the DGP and from what we've already known about it and established in the first arcs, it kind of falls short because we don't do anything with that, because then we switch so hard of a focus over to Baroba, who has successfully stolen a vision driver from Chiram, the new DGP game master. And she eventually uses it to create her own Grand Prix, the JGP, or Jamato Grand Prix. And it's here that Buffa's front and center, trying to win his world without riders, basically. The others are trying to stop him from taking over. It's also where Niram starts to be more of a focus here. The producer that we met in the previous arc, who sees anything that's not what he wants it to be as a fiction. And so he ends up being more involved and tasking the main characters, Geats, Neon, Tycoon, with stopping this whole thing from happening and defeating Baroba. Two varying levels of success, really. Clearly not really. But it's also the score I have to give my that. Also, I have to give my score for the Days of Star arc, 8 out of 10. Not an alpha arc. I don't hate it as much as other people, but I do think it falls flat near the end because of Neon's reveal as Days of Star meaning literally nothing and having no repercussions for her. And also the whole thing with the Jamato infection thing with Buffa doing nothing. So, a unique idea that kind of just goes nowhere, and it kind of upset me that it went nowhere. So, but anyway, so we start up the new arc, the, what they call it, the Lamentation arc. I call it the JGP arc, whatever. And so basically each challenge is set up basically to screw over anybody that's not a Jamato or a Jamato rider or Buffa. At this point, they bring Toru back into it, his friend that died, as a Jamato hybrid that really doesn't go anywhere either, but it's fine. And so they're trying to, to win to become the Jamashin, like the deity, the desire god from the previous challenges, and win their desire. But each challenge is set up basically to screw over everybody. There are many times where the main riders are trying to be part of the competition and they're getting screwed over. Oh, sorry, that's actually against the rules, blah, 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 blah. It's where we're getting a lot more back and forth between the characters in terms of with their support riders, and it's where Jean has a pretty good, decent character arc near the end of it. One of the more standout episodes has to do with Ace getting the Boost Mark II buckle, it fully revealing that he is reincarnated, that he's reincarnated many, many, many times, and that one of the first versions of him that fought in the DGP or, competed and won, put through a desire to continuously reincarnate until his desire was met. And then another one put through one that himself and any other reincarnations of himself will give their power in some way to a future version of themselves so that he can continue to move forward. This is what creates the Boost Mark II buckle. Does have some, it's a really cool suit, really cool debut. The henshin is great. The fights are great with it. Destroys Toru. Buffo does not care. Again, it's a cool buckle, but it has a drawback of tiring out the user. Happens a bunch of times. Geats would just fall asleep in the middle of battle. It's at this time that Jean starts getting more involved, which is, of course, Ace's supporter, right? And so he keeps getting involved because he thinks he's basically doesn't care about himself, doesn't care. He thinks he's invincible pretty much. Because where he comes in the future, like I said before, they are given a beginning, middle, end. Here's how it is. This is where it's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And so it excites him to be part of the DGP because it's something different, something unique, something to challenge the status quo, if you will. But eventually he has pretty much a near-death experience where it kind of reshapes his morals, and it leads him to help Ace with the Laser Raise Riser, which creates the laser boost form for him, thereby mitigating the sleepy effects and allowing Ace to fully use the form to its full extent and beat ass. Fighting Baraba, I think, is when it happens because he gets taken hostage by her when he falls asleep. So Jean being from the future and assuming his death is like a set, point, right? Like a point that cannot change. It's got to be like this. Only for him to nearly die kind of shifts him entirely, really helps him see the beauty of life and how precious it is, and it kind of rattles and really humanizes him. Alongside this, we get a really important arc with Neon. It's revealed through backstory and through a really good episode with Kyun, one of his only good episodes, if I'm being truly honest about it. At one point, they talk about that she was kidnapped when she was a child. Baraba finds out about this and gets the idea, maybe this isn't fully true, I'm going to figure it out. She figures out what's going on and holds it against Neon in a new challenge in the JGP, that if she doesn't compete, or even if she loses, she was going to reveal something to her. We get to it. So she was kidnapped, but the way that the news reports say it is, she was kidnapped and then she was returned to her family miraculously and everything was fine. Not exactly. Ace sees that as a bunch of bullshit. Looks into it, sees that Niram and others had something to do with it. Finds out that Neon used to be called Akari. She was about 11 around the time this happened. Akari was taken hostage, but Kosei, being the dick he was, thought, I'm going to show strength, I'm not going to give in. Doesn't give in to the demands of the kidnapper, and the kidnapper kills Akari. She's dead. It shatters him mentally, emotionally, everything, traumatizes him and the mother, and he begs on his hands and knees to Niram, because he'd already been sort of like aware of the DGP through his connections and sort of supporting them. He'll do everything in his power, put his entire foundation behind keeping them a secret, if they'll please fulfill a wish to bring back his daughter. This creates Neon. So Neon basically finds out she's not even human. She's a creation of the Desire Goddess, and it shatters her. It truly messes with her that she was lied to for so long by her parents, but also explains a lot of their rocky relationship because they're struggling with the fact that their daughter isn't really their daughter. Again, this comes up later on. We get a nice little pin in this later on, but it's a really good arc for her. And again, I love how we continue to take our main characters and really push them through the mud and really show how the DGP affects people in a negative way, on top of the somewhat positives, that there is a lot of negatives in the way that they hurt people. I love that. Very realistic, and it makes me very, very happy. That takes place, and right near the end here, we have a final challenge where civilians are part of it as well. And they are standing on these little circles that are colored a certain way. If you're not standing on the right one, you fall through and you're turned into bubbles and you're dead. It's revealed here to Keiwa, who ends up getting eliminated himself, that the desires don't come for free. They come at a cost. Fulfilling a desire in the DGP by the goddess of creation, she is powered by the misery and the death of others, which means you getting a wish fulfilled comes at the cost of someone else's life and happiness. This shatters Keiwa and really starts him on sort of the path towards his arc later for Bujin Sword and everything. But it makes him disillusioned with Geats, because now it's more revealed that Geats' mother might be the goddess of creation, and he's pissed why she would do this. He thinks willingly, not knowing she's being controlled by the higher-ups within the DGP to do this. Near the end of this arc with the JGP, Niram is fighting against Geats because Geats is pissed at Niram for not giving him the truth about everything. Niram is basically telling him to shut the hell up. So he's in Geyser form, laser boost form for Geats. They're going at it, DBZ style. Here comes Michinaga with the zombie critical strike, or zombie tactical strike, whatever. Swats them down through the hole. They're gone. Ace is out, Niram is out. And Buffa wins the JGP. He gains the power to defeat all riders. Invincibility. They cannot touch him. Begins his own Desire Royale to crush all riders and their cores, and thereby erasing their ability to henshin, their memories of it, and their ability to ever transform again. And he's only really ever challenged by Archimetal and his evolution to a Jamato himself. So the JGP arc, for me, I personally scored it a 9.5 out of 10. I really enjoy it. I think it's pretty well put together, and overall, really entertaining. I think it's got a lot of really good things going for it. I do wish, the only reason I took half a point off is I wish that Kyun had more to do. But other than that, overall, I really enjoy him. Did I say 9.5? I meant 9. I'm sorry. 9. I will change that. 1 second here. It's gonna erase that little number there, make it a 9. Okay. So, we are followed up this arc by the Lamentation, or not, sorry, the Yearning arc, or the arc where Buffa gets to absolutely curb stomp all the riders because they can't even touch them. When they try to, their attacks bounce off them. We see lots of basically cannon fodder riders get thrown in. Like I said, Groovy, who's a Beagle helmet rider. Ben and John transform only to get cucked, and we never see their suit or their helmets. I'm still mad about this, Toei. And Sarah actually joins it because through intervention by and meddling by Keikara, he ends up basically enticing her to join. And Keiwa has been taken out of it from last time, doesn't have his memories. He's shown the footage of her in there and wants to be part of it. Gets his ID core back, his driver. Boom, there you go. And again, it's at this point we see that Baraba and Keikara are actually working together to kind of screw with things and mess with things, cause misery together. And that Keikara is not anywhere near being a good person in any kind of way. Yeah, so that's how this arc kind of goes. It's, Buffalo just completely curb stomping riders. And we get a really cool moment near the end of it, though, where it's revealed that Archimetal becomes a full Jamato. He can actually touch Buffalo because he's not technically a rider. And we get the return of Ace by Sumuri, though. Sumuri ends up resurrecting Ace through her own blossoming creation powers, and him and Buffa actually transform together and fight together, complete with Ace using Buffa's powers to fight Archimetal and the Jamato. There's a scene where he literally, uses a kick to, bounce off of Buffa to attack, and Buffa's like, what the hell was that? He's like, you're invincible anyway, right? Which I really enjoy. But we also get the idea given from Michinaga, where he finally kind of explains more about what he's doing. He's going off against Neon, and I believe at this point Sarah as well. He ends up getting their cores, destroying them, and they're begging him before, don't do it, why are you doing this? And he finally says it. He says, because I've seen the pain and the misery the DGB puts people through. If I can destroy their ability to even transform at all, and maybe even their memories of it, they'll be better off. And I like this because it kind of, in a pseudo-weird roundabout way, kind of connects back to original Kamen Rider Ichigo. Stay with me here. So in the original Kamen Rider Ichigo, 1971 Kamen Rider, the first ever season, Takeshi Hongo was taken, prisoner, taken hostage, and forced to becoming a cybernetic, monster, if you will, right? He's forced to be augmented cybernetically, no longer human. Breaks away before he's able to escape and break away before the brainwashing happens. And instead of doing nothing or killing himself, he ends up realizing that he must use these, gifts, if you will, use this experience that happened to him to make him stronger and to prevent others from going through the same thing so that they can still be a human. He can't. He's lost his humanity, he thinks, and wants to preserve it for others. It's kind of a similar thing here with Buffalo, where he's realized, as much as he's fought, that that's the same thing going on for him, that he wants others to not have to go through the same pain that he's gone through. And I like this. I wish that it would have been talked about a little earlier in the show, but I do like that it's given as an idea. So the other bigger thing within this arc is we are subtly sort of introduced to Sewell, who is the villain near the end of it, and part of him is also for the next arc. We'll get there. Yeah, so this arc ends with the whole thing with the Geats 9 buckle, right? So Ace finds out his mother is the goddess of creation. She's been held hostage in the statue form, forced to create these wishes, thereby using the misery and the lives of fallen riders and civilians and whoever to create these wishes. He's shattered, pissed off, angry. This ends up kind of creating the Boost Mark III buckle, which folded out becomes the Geats 9 buckle, right? Finds a way to get into the area where his mother is, and he's absolutely emotionally distraught. He doesn't know what to say, doesn't know what to do, and he's worried he's going to lose her. The statue outside is falling apart, and he's worried he's going to die. She confirms it. She goes, yeah, you're right. This is my time to go. I'm done, but I want you to continue forward. I only, left you behind. I did not leave you behind purposefully to hurt you. I knew you would be strong. I knew you were a miracle, and that you would make miracles happen. Keep fighting for desire. Keep fighting for a world where people can be happy, and you will find it. This inspires him, and this fully empowers the buckle to become the Geats 9 buckle. He transforms into his final form, Geats 9, which is the full creation god powers against Sewell, who is has the vision driver, using Kamen Rider Gazer as the form for that for some reason, and fights against Geats. He's the overseer of the DGP, doesn't have a physical form for some reason, gets his ass beat. Doesn't die, weird, but whatever. And Geats ends up recreating the world to create his own new DGP, where anybody that wants to be part of it can voluntarily join, and people can find their happiness. Here we go, right? Because now he is a god of creation himself. That's what he's inherited from his mother. So again, the arc is kind of short and sweet, but it's really entertaining. Samuri resurrecting Ace, Ace finding out more about his mother, Buffa's, motivations given. But it does end with, like I said, the revelation that Mitsume, Ace's mom, is alive, and that she's been forced to do this. So again, that was really pretty sad and upsetting. So that is how that arc kind of ends, is with the Geats 9 debut, and then we move into the next arc, the Creation arc. So the Lamentation arc, the Yearning arc, I am going to give that, let's see here, I think I'm going to give that right around another 8 out of 10. I really do enjoy it. There's a few little things, I'm at a 9. There's a few little things about it that I wish were better, but I don't hate it. Not nearly as much as I'm not a big fan of the Days of Star arc. It's got some cool parts to it, but I think that it could have been paced a little better, and the whole thing about Buffa and the reason why he was doing all of this could have been alluded to a bit more before we got to this point. It's not bad, but I kind of feel like Michinaga feels a little bit lost in the sea of characters in this show sometimes, and this is kind of an arc that kind of like shows that a little bit. But again, it's not bad necessarily. It's just wasn't my favorite, but I still enjoy the arc. So now we move on to the final arc, the Creation arc. Again, this is where Ace has created his own DGP, where anybody can join voluntarily, basically. And I do want to say that the fight he had with Sewell was bombastic, entertaining, and absolutely a visual treat. My favorite part of it is when he literally hushes the fucking theme song to stop so he can do the attack he's going to do. Absolutely jaw-dropping. Love it. But yeah, so we start with the next arc, Creation arc. So Ace is now a creation god himself. New powers, he's not used to them. He even says he doesn't quite have a handle on them, and he can't yet create a new ID core for, let's say, Neon. Who's upset she can't be part of it, because he's also put through that, yes, anybody can voluntarily join, but also all the other people who have ever been a part of it have retain their memories of it. Buffa eventually decides to join because he sees that the Jamato are still a problem, and just in general, Ace might need help. Keiwa ends up wanting to be a part of it too. And he's still kind of gripping with the reality of how the DGP wishes come to be. And he's really morally conflicted. Even when he's told Mitsume was forced to do this, he somehow can't forgive this. And in a certain way, it's like, seriously, come on, Keiwa. But also, like, you get it because of how much hurt he's been put through in his life. And now he sees the whole entire scope of it. Again, really reiterating on this concept of, like, the effects the DGP can have on people in a negative way. We also get Sool's physical body, named Geat, that joins the fray and employs Baraba and Kekura to work with him to screw over Geats and his compatriots. He even gives them the Premium Baraba, Premium Kekura cards for their Laser Race Riders, giving them a Kaijin-esque, fusion-y, rider-like physical suit form to fight with. Again, really cool, but I really wish that Geat and Sool would just be one concept and they didn't split them up into two different things. I think it doesn't really do much, and they're kind of like a bit of a whimper of a villain, but that's just my opinion. I don't know. So they work closely with the new Jamato Gardener, who's revealed to be Daichi. Daichi was in the JGP arc. He doesn't really do shit except for going, whoa, when Archimetal is like being consumed by his own Jamato and becoming a Jamato. But whatever. So he's the new Gardener, and they want him to help target Sarah, thereby forcing Keiwa into becoming this true Kamen Rider. I said this was going to get dark, and it does. So this is actually successful when Sarah is infected with this new Jamato virus, like little microscopic ones. They put through the idea there's two levels to it. Daichi talks about this. Level 1, you get them inside of you, you're defeated as a Jamato, and you turn back to human. But if you get too many and you become a level 2, you die if you're defeated. So it's, again, they are successful with forcing Keiwa into becoming a true Kamen Rider because Sarah's infected and then mistakenly killed by Buffa, who had no idea who she was, transformed. Keiwa breaks. He finds out this is happening. He's with Ace at the time, fighting Daichi in a Jamato form. Runs off to find Sarah, and it breaks him. He's lost his only familial tie left, and he actually turns to helping Geat capture Sumuri to create a new creation goddess. They want to force her to be their new creation goddess to rival Geats. Through this, we get the debut of the Bujin sword form / buckle, which is created by Sumuri. He basically begs her to give him the power he needs to keep her safe, and she creates the buckle as a result. He has her, Sarah's, her bow from her hair, like a barrette or something, and that kind of is like the physical thing to hold on to pray to create the buckle. Trunks' Buffa absolutely beats his ass and pretty much anyone in his path. A bit of a dark turn for Keiwa, but one that I actually quite enjoyed watching. Seeing this once morally good man sink low and turn dark made for awesome rider potential. But Keiwa, however, is not immune to losing, as he is successful in getting Sumuri to over to Geat and gets his wish fulfilled, but he inadvertently returns killers and criminals to the world, namely the one that kidnapped Neon. We'll get there. So, who takes her prisoner? And again, his sister and parents are revived, only to literally die. He storms off to Geat. What the hell's going on? Geat's like, not my problem, dude. You're the loser who asked for everybody that ever died to come back, and that's going to bring bad people back, idiot. Basically. And it's pretty shocking. It's a pretty dark turn, especially because the form, the Bujin sword form, is like black and green mainly, so it's like this super like emo phase for him. He at one point fights some of the criminals who are riders and ends up taking over a gang basically. Ace at this time is trying to do what he can to stop everything from happening, but is kind of being pulled in a billion different directions. And he eventually has a showdown with Ace, wanting to end him once and for all and fully, secure his world where everyone can be happy and his family can be back and all that good stuff, right? And so it's a really, really good point within the show, and I really do overall enjoy it. It's a really good fight. He is able to beat Ace, kind of, but I think Ace was kind of letting him win so he could see what he was doing. And it's only when Sumuri gets involved and stops the two of them, kind of using her creation powers a little bit, but then eventually giving those all the way to Ace, that Ace fully becomes a creation god. White hair, white eyes, and everything. And proves to Keiwa that there is good left in him and that he can help him if he will believe in Ace. So it's a really good little arc for him. I do enjoy it. He does have a point where he's able to beat the shit out of Daichi as well once he finds out it was that he was part of it, clearly. And I did like that, getting his comeuppance like that. But overall, it's a really good arc. I like seeing it. It's a very unique angle for him, and it makes sense for somebody so positive to fall as low as he did because he lost everything. So, Neon also goes through an amazing arc in these last few episodes too, whereby Akari's killer is brought back due to Keiwa's desire. Like I said, Jeet warns him that everybody came back, even bad people. And one of those, like I said before, is the person who originally had killed her. He sees that she's alive. He's pissed about this. What the hell? Like, I totally killed her. And takes her hostage because at this time she still doesn't have her powers back. Her father, Kosei, gets word of this because, of course, the killer, of course, has to directly call him out that he's got the daughter for ransom. He's holding her for ransom. And Kosei kind of has a moment. He realizes that he does have love for Neon, that he does want her in his life, that he does see her as his daughter, and that seeing her in danger like this has proven to him that he's always loved her. Even though she's not Akari, she doesn't have to be. She's still his daughter, and that those positive moments they had throughout their life were still very real. So he actually goes to Ace. He's been broken out of prison because of what happened with the criminals coming back and people coming back in general with the new DGP and everything. And so he goes to Ace and he begs him to be part of his DGP. Please give me the power I need to protect what matters most, to protect Neon, to keep her safe. Ace gives him a driver and the fantasy buckle, which ends up being eventually Neon's in just a little bit here. And my man transforms. Time Fire gets to transform again into Kamen Rider Gyago, which is a remold of the Seeker helmet from the movie, of course. But it looks great. So does the fantasy buckle. Absolutely kicks the ass of the murderer, but is also being attacked at the same time by Baraba. Baraba and Kikra keep getting involved here and there, screwing with shit. And it's not until Ace gets involved that she kind of backs off, but she does go after Neon and nearly kills her dad. Not until, though, that is until he gives her his driver, and she tries to use it to transform with his ID core, and it doesn't work, of course. She desires and prays hard enough of wanting to be able to keep him safe, realizing he does love her because he tells her that he does, and that he does see her as his daughter, and she realizes she does love her father and her mother, and ends up getting her ID core restored somehow, and uses the fantasy buckle with a whole new henshin pose as well into fantasy Nago, and wipes the floor with Baraba, and this was it's just therapeutic. Seeing Baraba get her ass beat is just one of my favorite things in this show. But Baraba does get beaten back, and she does leave, actually damaging her face, seeing that there's something underneath it, that she's ugly underneath, like a witch, basically. They mention at one point that she's actually 200 years old or something like that, but whatever. So she beats him. She beats Baraba, beats her, and is able to save her dad, brings him to the hospital, and it's actually right before that, she brings him to the hospital, and he gives her the driver, and that's when she tries to use it to fight. But anyway, she eventually makes good with her parents, and she's able to see that they've seen the error of their ways, that they do love her, and that even though they at first didn't see her as their daughter, they do now. They do love her, and that they do feel repentance for what they did, that they do feel guilt over treating her the way that they treated her. And I really like this arc. Again, it kind of hit harder for me being a dad myself. Kosei's turn from uncaring to loving dad was heartfelt and actually pretty well written, in my opinion, as was his short tenure as Gago, using the new fantasy buckle that Neon gets eventually, clearly. It was also cool that he used it in a different way than her, with swords and being more offensive, where she would having it come up and represent itself as shields and things like that. I thought that was cool. So eventually, after this whole thing happens, we also are trying to figure out everything that happened with Sarah being gone and all of that. Daichi has gotten his ass beaten so much that he's basically forced to work with everybody, and they basically force him. Buffa is trying to still make it right with Keiwa to bring back Sarah. There's a point where Michinaga fights Baraba and nearly dies, but does end up beating her, and afterwards still promises to Keiwa he wants to help him make things right. And so they end up having Daichi help them. And after defeating Baraba, Daichi is able to, through his Jamato sciencey weirdness, because they mentioned earlier that her knowledge went into this tree in the garden, and that tree is gone now, but there might be some way to bring her back. They are able to bring her back, because through the efforts of Michinaga helping out, that they are able to bring back Sarah. And Keiwa does get to square off against Keikura as well, finally ending his reign as a villain. Pretty good fight for both of them, fighting their support riders. And again, Buffett does what he can during the arc with Keiwa being dark to kind of bring him back, even though he's putting himself in mortal danger and getting his ass beaten. He's still trying to do what he can because he feels absolutely remorseful and guilty about what he did to Sarah. So overall, things end decently, but near the end of the creation arc, Geats has a showdown with Sewell in his Regard Omega form. Jeet is able to transform at one point into Kamen Rider Regard with the Zillion driver. It's just another redo of the suit. It actually looks really good. It's a nice crimson color to it. But he's beaten by Ace and revealed to be the physical body separated away from Sewell. Kind of stupid, whatever. So Sewell takes on the full Kamen Rider Regard powers as Kamen Rider Regard Omega. The Regard suit and the way it works, the powers, is that it combines him with that of the viewers, the audience, to have power that can rival Geats. And so they finally have their showdown. Fighting all over the place. Creation God versus, asshole. I don't know. We also get the idea of this Dark Sumuri thing. Back when Sumuri was partially a creation goddess, she cried at one point and her tears turned to crystal. Jeet took it and created, basically from that, a dark version of Sumuri, a goddess of destruction. All she really did was power up Baraba and Keikura. Really nothing. And she eventually has a part in a few minutes here that I'll discuss. But anyway, so it's seeming as though Sewell is pretty evenly matched with Geats until Neon and her father end up approaching the audience members, letting them know that most likely Sewell is going to absolutely kill them when he's done using them. They're not going to get back to the future, and they're really stupid for really supporting him. So they break some of his support, and that gives Ace the advance that he needs, the advantage that he needs to be able to beat Sewell, mostly, until Sewell all of a sudden pulls out of his ass that he has time manipulation powers, pauses Geats, reverses time around him before he had his driver, and we get that scene in the rain with Sumuri with the 40x shooter raised, the Magnum 40x shooter raised at Ace from the theme song. What's going to happen? She pulls the trigger. Ace is gone. Sewell is over the moon excited, announces it through Dark Sumuri to the world that Ace is gone, and that's how we end episode 48 in this last little bit of this arc, technically, because 49 and episode 1 are one arc. I'm not really going to count it that way. But this creation arc, I'm going to give a 9 out of 10. I think it was really unique. I like that Ace was constantly challenging himself. He even mentions at one point that the reason he was able to help Neon recreate her ID core is because of the combined powerful desires from her and her parents. They mention that in a DGP card for his, a white DGP card that says the stronger desires of his followers or his friends, supporters, will increase his power. And I like that he wasn't just instantly God and able to just wipe through everybody because he's, a deity. I like that he was struggling with this power, didn't know how to fully use it, and was learning as he goes. It's good. It's good power scaling, and I'm happy they didn't just make him Invincible Magoo. That would have made me really pissed if that's how they went with the show. But overall, a really, really good arc, and I do really enjoy this arc. I think it's one of the strongest in the show, honestly. So, final episode is really unique because we started up and we find out that Sumuri wasn't really the one that shot Ace. We get the reveal that Dark Sumuri had control over her, and was able to somehow force her to do it. Whatever. But all is lost because she is not messaged by, but contacted, if you will, by Geats, telling her, don't feel too bad about it, and this is part of the plan. Just hear me out. Beginning of this episode is unique though because it shows Sumuri by a shrine outside with a bunch of desire cards and stuff, and even Jean talking about the world Ace left behind. And inside the shrine is the Geats 9 buckle in stone. And we're like, what's going on? Where is this? What's happening? Come to find out, this is current time. We got to go back and show you what happened. So again, sure, Sumuri is, of course, like I said, tending to the shrine and speaking to Mujin about the world Ace left behind. The final battle really starts when we see what took place prior to this scene. Sewell seeks out Neon, Keiwa, and Michinaga to stamp out any possible threats left now that Ace is gone. Really? No, he's not. Come on. The Riders fight valiantly, but they are beaten. Even Buffa, going into his Mao form a little bit, is still not able to defeat Sewell. He's really close to honestly killing them because he reverses time around them to not have their drivers either. But it's in this moment that their resolve is strong enough, their desire to want Ace there, to support Ace even though he's not there, to support him in his ideals and his world, that Ace returns. And he reveals that honestly being shot was kind of part of his plan. That it doesn't bother him that happened. And what I kind of gathered from it is that, to my understanding of the events, Ace essentially knew his mortal body would perish, and that would be the last thing he needed to ascend to full godhood. That was why he had been struggling with the powers, because he was still mortal, technically. So, I do enjoy that. I think that's really cool. I think that's a really unique thing here, that it was all part of his plan. Again, it just adds more to how much of a badass, awesome main rider Ace truly is. Yeah, God, I really enjoy him. He's such a good main rider. Goodness. So, Sewell is decimated through the combined efforts of the riders. Ace ends up giving them their drivers back. His driver actually says when he gets there, because he arrives in his base form, of course, Magnum Boost, of course, it's a Takahashi season, it actually says, fight, ready, fight for desire. That was really cool. They get the drivers back, they fight in their base forms, kick his ass, revolve on, really good choreography, and Sewell is destroyed. Ace fully just gets rid of him, he's gone. So Ace then creates, as a new god now, creates a world where anyone can find their happiness. The others want him to stay, they're truly saddened that he has to go, but they understand that he's got a higher purpose now. And pretty much most everyone gets a happy ending, including Neon and Kyun, Daichi and the Jamato, and the rest of the heroes. There is a bit near the end here where they were like forcing civilians, Jeet and Sewell and whatever, were forcing civilians to be riders and like fighting each other and stuff. And there was Game Masters and Jiroi came back into it for like an episode, kinda. And that's how Ace got close enough to be able to get to Sewell to fight him. But it didn't really do much, and I just like mentioning it because it was cool, but it was just like another obstacle kind of a thing. We get to see Buffa kind of challenge himself not to fucking fight somebody and just to stop like hold people back, you know. But again, it was cool, and we also get the whole thing of the riders, if they don't fight, they are snap of the finger by the Game Masters and they are dead. Heads explode, gone. Punk Jack is kind of there, and so is Daichi. Daichi reforms the Jamato to having little like sunflowers on their heads. And they're like good Jamato, and they're helping to like keep the Game Masters back so they don't hurt people. That's pretty much all they do. They're pretty much sidelined the entire arc there, so whatever. But yeah, so like I said, most everyone gets their happy ending. We get to see the little wish cards. Sarah's is really funny because it talks about I want to be friends with Neon. I want to be able to go shopping with her, and also be able to help set up her house. Oh, I want to do this, and then at one point she goes, "Wait, the card isn't big enough. I can't fit all my wishes on here." But yeah, so this finale kind of floored me the first time watching it, and it's really stuck with me ever since. I love that Ace continues his streak of being a near infinite amount of steps ahead of everyone else. Overall, the series did many things right, but it did stumble in a few places at times. Villains are really not the season's strong suit, but Jiroi and Niram, I think, stand out as mostly competent threats overall, alongside mostly Baraba as well, and a little bit Keikara. Jeet/Sewell, I think, should have been just one thing and not two separate characters, and then also given time to actually be characters. By the end of it, I don't care. They're just assholes, and that's it. The Regard and Omega suits are beautiful, but a great suit doesn't really save an underwhelming villain. The idea of a villain that's the overseer of the DGP and the complete antithesis to Ace is great in theory, but in execution it kind of falls flat somewhat. Honestly, you can kind of look over this, however, because so much of the show is so entertaining, thought-provoking, and well executed. Week to week, I was glued to my screen watching the show, and to see what next thing was going to take place. My overall score, get it all put together here, is, I believe if I'm scoring it right, I want to say right around, let me just make sure, check my math, all that good stuff. Let's see here. Calculator, one moment here, we got the 10, plus the 8, plus the 9, plus a 9, plus 9. Yeah, so it's going to give it a strong 45 out of 50 total points. That's where I score it there overall, going by the scoring system of my normal episode reviews for my own personal channel. And it did make its way to being my number one season. Number one for me is Geats. Number two is Forza. Number three is Build. I really enjoy this show, and I hope in some way this long-ass video here has in some way influenced you guys to want to watch it. I know it has spoilers in it, but I hope that this was informative and was a good way to kind of see some other broader stroke content that we can provide here on the Henshins and Homies channel. I do thank you so much for watching the first episode of Toku Spotlight. Be sure to subscribe, turn on the notifications, and comment below if there's more topics you want to see us cover. But as always, stay hooked on heroes. I'll see you later. Bye-bye, homies.